the weekly tribe is great. It's awesome. It's necessary, but it's like 50% of it.
It's a whole new thing. Believe me, I was that guy. I was going. This feels good, even when the snow and ice. Yeah, roughing it. I'm good. I'm real. Carry the fire. It's steps up.
All right. We are here today with Oscar Guru Womack. Guru, welcome to the podcast, brother.
I'm ecstatic to be here. And I'm a words person, so I don't use words I don't mean. If I don't mean it, I don't say it. So that's flattery if you say it and you don't mean it. So.
Yeah. Well, man, that's awesome. And so tell us what tribe and city, state you're in.
Okay, I'm from the state of Oklahoma. The tribe is the Sooner tribe. We work out at Tinker Air Force Base. And I have 4 guys from my tribe who were patched in Texas last November. So, and if I can quickly mention their names, we kind of have the youngest guy and the oldest guy in one tribe in a sense. Caden Simba Sodders just turned 14.
Yeah.
He got patched. His dad, Brian Forge Sodders, is our tribe leader. Tough dude. He's got muscles I didn't know existed in his body, and a super Christian and a big heart. And then there's Eric Turbine Wexler and myself. So we had 4 guys out of our tribe. We basically carry about 10 guys.
Sooner tribe made a big showing down there in Texas. You guys brought it.
Yeah,
and I'll tell you, we could do several podcasts on Class 49, because you're right. You had Simba, which that's a whole podcast right there. That's a 2-part podcast. It's Simba and Forge, and that was the most. I'm not even going to tell the story, but I'm just going to say that was the most emotional FTX that I've ever been a part of. It was powerful.
Yeah, I was proud of him. He's a super young man. He's everything that he appears. I mean, we're all human beings, right? That little dude. I mean, I can one of my legs weighs more than he does, but he does not quit.
And so you mentioned the youngest and the oldest. So who was the oldest?
Well, the oldest happens to be me. That tends to be a theme here lately. There's no virtue in being old, because you can be old and dumb, and I've been that, and I am that still sometimes. But I try my best to live up to my call sign. But it implies more than I have in terms of knowledge. But
well, you're humble, and there's a lot of men that say they can't come to Men's Alliance because they're old. They're like, and I'm not even talking like real old, like guys like 65, and they're like, oh, I can't go to Men's Alliance. I'm too old for that. And I carry a picture of you around in my wallet that I just show. I'm like, man, guys, a lot of times, it is in your head too. Some guys, if they're 60 and they're saying, I can't go to Men's Alliance, I can't keep up with you young guys. I'm like, man, now you were 78, right?
Right.
In November.
Right.
You just turned 79?
I turned 79 on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. So you went through Carry the Fire at 78.9, right?
Well, full disclosure, if I had known beforehand, I might have eked out, but no,
you could say you're older than Jesus. Born on Christmas Eve.
I like that. No, I'm not. I'm not. That's as much as I'm saying. That's on the verge of blasphemy. I'm not going there.
He's on the verge of that a lot. But always just on the verge.
Yeah.
But, the idea is you went through at 78. And, you crushed it. And you inspired men. Guys were looking at you, and they were like, okay, Guru's doing this, I'm not quitting then.
It's interesting. They were waiting for me to violate Rule 1. I wasn't going to do that. But I have to say, I was sucking air from late Friday. From there on, I was holding on with dear life, so to speak. But as a friend of mine used to say, ain't no hill but for a climber. So if you just have to get through. I have a plaque on my wall at home. It's 6 words. It's by Robert Frost, and it says, "The best way out is through." Mm. Sometimes you can't go around it. You just got to face that mountain and do what you have to do. You might get crushed in the process, but
that's a great line. We need to put that on something.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's not mine. It's Robert.
No, we're gonna say Guru.
Somebody's gonna see our T-shirt and they're gonna be like, "I could have sworn that was Robert Frost."
Oh, the Guru shirt.
No, never heard of him.
Blasphemy and plagiarism. You guys are really gonna get me in trouble here.
How'd you get your call sign?
Well, I was say things pretty much like that, and somebody says, "You're always dropping this and saying that," and I said, "It's just common sense kind of stuff." And that's how I got my call sign. They said, "Well, we're going to call you Guru." I said, "What do you think about that?" I said, "It's fine with me." I was looking at the exercise portion of it,
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, they were doing burpees. I said, "All right, I'm going to hate this. I know from the beginning."
Man. So you're in Sooner Tribe in Oklahoma, but tell us a little bit about where you grew up, where you started from, and then tell us how you became a Christ follower in that process too.
Okay, I grew up in Washington D.C. and my mother was about 4'0", which is why I'm 5'0". My father was your height, and unfortunately, God has a sense of humor. He decided I wouldn't get that from my dad, and I did a lot of. I grew up in the church. I sang in choirs. I can remember one of our first meetings, tribe meetings. I sang a song, a verse. It was part of my devotion. And then afterwards, I went to the leaders guy and they said, "We don't sing songs." I said, "Oh my goodness!" I said, "I'm sorry about that, guys. We won't sing any more songs." But anyway, and I went through the public school system in D.C. At the time I was growing up. The public school system wasn't what it is now, and I'll just leave it at that. But and I was always, we grew up poor. I always had money. I had 3 paper routes. I delivered the Washington Post in the morning. In the evening, I delivered the Daily News, which was a tabloid, and the Evening Star, which was a regular fold-up newspaper. Because I didn't like being poor. I always had money in my pocket. The problem then, though, was you had to go collect from your customers, and it's not like now where you got all these Venmo and all this stuff. You had to go to people's doors and knock on doors, and in the project area, you had to be careful because when you left there, you would get, guys were waiting for you to come so they could take whatever money you had that you had gotten from your customers you collected for. But I loved delivering papers, and I loved working. In Genesis, Adam had a job. His job was to take care of the Garden of Eden. He made it harder than it needed to be. I have that habit too sometimes, making the easy hard. But I grew up in D.C. I wanted to get in the Air Force. My uncle was in the Air Force at the time as well. So all the colleges I applied for, and also I should say, when I was in high school, they had something called the NDCC, which was the National Defense Cadet Corps. And I loved drilling and marching. We won drill teams when I was in high school. That stuff is, verboten now. And if you have a drill team now, you'd probably be shot. But anyway, it was drill teams and cadet corps throughout the D.C. area at the time. But I went to to school in upstate New York, Hobart College. I was turned out to be one of 4 people of color at the school, and so my life was difficult. Everybody was a valedictorian or salutatorian. I thought I was smart, but everybody was smart. Not only were they smart, everybody was an athlete or they had done something superb. But I wanted to get through college, but also wanted to get into the Air Force ROTC program, and which was shut down the year after I left. It was Governor Rockefeller at the time. They had a riot on base because of Vietnam War and things like that. And so they had ROTC, or ROTC, as we used to call it, kicked off the campus. But I was one of 2 distinguished cadets out of our detachment, which I was proud of because the only guys that got distinguished graduate were the pilot candidates. And we only, because of our size, we could only have 1 distinguished graduate, 1 DG.
Where was your detachment? Was it at Hobart?
It was Hobart College in upstate New York.
So you want to hear something funny?
What's that?
I did Air Force ROTC.
Don't say Rochester, Syracuse.
No, I did it at my detachment. Was at a historically black college.
Oh, really? Where was it?
And there was about 3 of us white folk.
Just the opposite.
Detachment.
Just.
It was at North Carolina A&T.
Okay, all right.
So I went to school at UNCG, which didn't have Air Force ROTC. So if you want to do Air Force ROTC, you drove across town and went to A&T.
Right.
And at HBCU.
Right.
And I think there was maybe 3 or 4 white folks in a detachment of, there was probably 80, 90 cadets.
Yeah, you had a much larger.
So I got that little taste, I got that little experience of getting to be the minority.
My mother used to always say, don't concentrate on how you look. You're looking outward. He says, you spend all your time looking inward, you're never going to go for it. You gotta keep looking forward.
Sounds like a guru.
Yeah.
I see where you get some truth bombs.
But anyway, so our professor of aerospace studies said, he says, I can only do 1 DG, and we got to go with the pilot candidate. I said, I understand. But I don't know what changed, but they had 2 DGs. That was the last class. And so
he called his boss and he fought for credit.
So, and I love being in the Air Force. But
what'd you do?
I was when I first came in, I was a student squadron commander. I trained, just about all the bases I went to are now closed up. So that just shows you.
Yeah, right.
But I was at Chanute Air Force Base, and I had a 500-man squadron. I had fire protection guys and airframe repair guys that were in my squadron. And I was a 2nd lieutenant, as a commander. I love that.
Yeah.
I could play. Now, that was at the time when, I don't know if you remember, there was a character in the comic pages, I can't remember what, Lieutenant Flap, and my TIs, my training instructors used to call me Lieutenant Flap because I had a little bit of afro at the time that you could wear then, and but I love that assignment, but when they started having basically racial incidents across the military, guess what? I had guys who knew how to set fires, because they were fire protection guys, and so they set fires on the base, and so the 2-star, had me in his office, and I knew then that I was toast, not to follow on that fire imagery there, but so I said, everything's good, but the next thing I know, just about all of these student squadron commanders that were in that had guys involved in the Rutgers on base there, and we weren't the only base. This was happening across the Air Force, across the military, really. We all got remote assignments in different places. I said, I'm going to Alaska. Where, Anchorage? No, top of mountain in Fairbanks. Oh, okay. Where are you going? I'm going to Korea. So,
what time frame? About what year?
This was 1970.
Okay.
1970. So, but I love being in the Air Force. But then after that, I from the middle of my Air Force career through the end, I was a contracts manager. I bought airframe, airplane parts, satellite systems. I'm dating myself with the next one. Local area networks, and nobody used that term anymore. When computers, mainframe computers were just coming into the Air Force, and so I ended up. My last assignment was I was at Tinker Air Force Base, and I bought telecommunication systems for the entire Air Force. But I loved being in when I was in. But when the chief of staff started dealing with the uniform, trying to make it look like a Navy uniform, I realized it was time for me to get out. My father used to always say, when you can't support the man you work for, don't get fired. Just, resign with grace. He used more salty terms than that, but that's the essence of what he said. So I realized I was not, if you can't support the boss totally. I wasn't doing any subversive stuff, but if your heart isn't in it, you have to do something else. So, but and as a Christian, I've always, when I was growing up, because I grew up on the King James Bible, so most of my memory verses are the King James verse.
Yeah.
They're thou and like Joshua, be not afraid. There are thous and things like that. Yeah. But there was a word that we used to use. It's called engrafting, which is kind of an agricultural term. Mm-hmm. And we used to always say, engraft this verse into your heart. So I grew up with a lot of memory verses. And it's kind of interesting because at our Carry the Fire web, was saying he had, when we were talking about the SMART goals, he was saying he had anger issues. Well, I grew up with that too. When you're only 5'0", you're always fighting guys your size. You're getting beat up, you're getting picked on. So, you're fighting all the time, and you get, you're angry at the world. So I started memorizing verses that had to do with anger, and one of them, I can't remember, I think it's in Proverbs. It says, the discretion of a man deferreth his anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression. Now that's King James.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. But I'd have verses like that. Somebody would come up, and I grew up with a lot of profanity. So, because at the time I came in the Air Force, everybody used profanity, particularly pilots, and I worked for pilots. They were the greatest guys I used to work for because, I worked for a guy when I was in Alaska. He says, I don't do any writing. He says, I fly planes. He says, you sign you do all the paperwork. You write all the OERs, the operations guy, that whole site now, which I can't remember, we had a couple hundred people there. Your cell phone now can run the whole site, but at any rate, I lost my train of thought thinking about that now. But it was just the fact that I had a lot of authority. He says, I don't do any writing. He says, you sign everything. He says, I'll sign it, you write it. And he says, can't use the word. If anything's wrong, that's your backside. I said, yeah, that's a good deal. I love that. And like I said, operations guy hated my guts. Well, at least he didn't like me. He didn't know I wrote his OER. But here's the thing. My heart was not, I knew that I wrote his OER I knew nothing about, this is radar sites, even what he did, but I studied and then wrote. He thought the boss wrote his OER, but I didn't try to do anything evil or nefarious with him.
That's a lot of power.
Well, it is, but it's those Bible verses that engrafted about knowing that if nobody else sees, God sees, and the rain falls on the evil and the good and all that. So you're not escaping His reach, and that got me through a lot of tough situations.
How long were you in the Air Force?
22 years, 9 months, and 2 weeks. It was time for me to go when I go, like I said. But
that's 2 years, 9 months, and 2 weeks longer than I was.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I did 20 even. 20 a day, 24 hours is what they make you do.
Okay.
So when in your life course did you get married?
Well, I got married. My boss, I got married in 1972, December the 22nd. In fact, my son was born on the 12th of December. We got married on the 22nd of December in 1972, and of course, I'm born on Christmas Eve, so a lot happens in December. That's a month that I do a lot of reflecting. But I got married when I was in Alaska. I was on a remote site, but my boss, like I said, because even though I was a second lieutenant, and among the officers, they had about 6 officers, I was junior. But like you said, I had all that power because I was the exec, and so when things, when the boss was mad, I was the guy that people came to, what's happening, blah blah, and this is before computers, so everything was pen and ink. But anyway, my wife was at Elmadorf, as it turns out. This is a long story. You may have to really cut this. I'll try to make it short, okay? And remind me to tell you what I tell people about the day I got married. Well, I'll tell you right now. The day I got married was the 22nd of December, 1972. And when you're in Alaska, somewhere around the 18th of June, 18th or 20th of June, it's the longest day of the year. They even have the midnight baseball game. Somewhere around the 21st or 22nd of December is the shortest day of the year in terms of daylight. So I always tell people the day I got married was the darkest day of my life because it's the truth. My wife.
That's the winter solstice, isn't it?
Yeah. My wife, I said, that's the truth. There's no exaggeration in that at all.
Hey, men, is your money reflecting how God wants to use you? Do you have a plan for your money? Are you optimizing your situation on taxes and investments? I want to tell you guys about Tom Doc Love. He's over at the Main Street Group, and he will help sharpen you around money. Now, I personally use Doc and the Main Street Group for my investments. He handles mine. I can tell you from experience, he is phenomenal. I highly recommend him. The average client pays less than 1% per year, which also includes tax and financial planning fees. By the way, past performance does not guarantee future results. Make sure you mention Men's Alliance when you reach out, and they will invest the first year of fees into Men's Alliance 501c3 nonprofit. That's right. Part of their mission to invest in bringing men closer to Christ, with over 200,000 raised for Men's Alliance so far. So Doc, Nuke, Sherpa, and Rev all are tribesmen at the Main Street Group. They are fee-only fiduciaries, and Tom Doc is the owner. He's a certified financial planner, a Dave Ramsey Smart Vestor Pro. They use Charles Schwab to manage their client assets, and their office is in Innsbruck, Virginia, but they can serve clients throughout the world. With Tom, you get a guy who has been recognized as the #2 financial advisor by the Richmond Times-Dispatch, #1 in Style Weekly, and a top 40 under 40 advisor in the country in 2019. He's also been recognized by the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, and Forbes magazine. Dave Ramsey and Charles Schwab are separate entities, of course, from the Main Street Group. So check them out if you're looking for any sort of financial advice, planning, investments. You can't beat the Main Street Group. Call Doc and tell him you're with Men's Alliance.
Right.
But my boss, I told him, I said, well, my wife is stationed now. I met her initially at Chanute Air Force Base. She was the daughter of a sergeant. And back in those days, they had something called fraternization, which meant if you were an officer, you didn't do anything with the enlisted guys. You didn't date their daughters. You didn't go to the NCO club. We had clubs back then. Mm-hmm. You don't hear the word camaraderie anymore, but that's what we had. So when she was in the last. I told my boss, I said, I'd like to, get married. We're thinking of getting married. And he says, you're on a mountain, you're on a hill, in Fairbanks. It's called, I can't think of the name off the top of my head now. But he says, it's a remote site. You're not supposed to go off the remote site. But again, with the power, and because I was exec and everything, he says, okay, you can leave. This was outside of Fairbanks. He says, you can leave on Friday, be back here by Sunday night. So I left on a Friday, got married on a Saturday, and was back on the site on Sunday night on a remote site. And you're not supposed to be off on remote sites at all. But that's when colonels had power. Talking about power then. And and she's an old school military wife. She supports, everything I do, and she humbles me in ways that I can't express because deep down I'm a knucklehead, but she hides the knucklehead aspect. I mean, she talks about me. You might say, well, she should do that, but sometimes the people you're closest to are the people that you sort of take for granted. And it took me a couple of years to realize that, God had placed somebody very important in my life. And half the time, I wasn't doing anything crazy, but, I wasn't quite, listening as I should have. I was interested in, like every other junior officer, trying to get below the zone, and you're interested in your career. And I remember my dad telling me, because I had one child at a time, he said, you better have that second child before you're biologically unable. And again, he didn't say it in that language, saltier. That's why my children are 10 years apart, because I figured I have the second child when I make this rank and I make that rank. And it wasn't happening quite like that. And then I got to a place, actually in the Air Force, where I realized that I was looking at success in the wrong way, and that's things happen to you. And in my case, it was when I got passed over for LC the first time. I got passed over for LC. My father-in-law died, and it was just one thing after the other. The shuttle crashed, blew up. I was working 24/7. I was in LA at the time at LA Air Force Station. I literally lived at work after the shuttle went down, and it was just everything was. I was out of sorts with the things that were important in my life, and but I was still going to chapel and going to church, and it was. But all that time, my wife was. She was absorbing in it. It was her dad, obviously, but she stayed with me, and what's the word? My inability to pay attention to her, even though I didn't realize it at the time, she absorbed all that and kept supporting me. So I've always appreciated that, and I really respect the whole covenant thing of marriage. My wife and I, we go through marriage, these counseling classes, marriage couple classes. Mm-hmm. We're in one right now. We're the oldest couple. Again, this age thing comes up all the time now. You guys are still breathing. Yeah. We get it. But there are three other young couples, and they come up to, how did you guys make it? And how did this happen? And how did that happen? And just two words, but God, mm-hmm. Because you think you're making it happen and you're doing nothing. In fact, I was gumming it up thinking I wasn't gumming it up. And and negligence, that's the word I was looking for. And not a belligerent negligence, but a benign negligence. It's still negligence, regardless of the adjective. Mm-hmm. It takes two. That's how God meant it, and both have to cooperate and not let things distract. But at any rate, I'm way off the point there.
So you've been married, if my math right, 53 years.
That's correct. He must be an engineer. These are the only guys I know that can count in their head. I was a liberal arts guy. I write things.
That's the full extent of my math in public, right there. That's as far as it goes.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Well, obviously God, right? You're like, couldn't have done it without God. But what's some practical marriage advice you got for the younger men?
Well, I think the number one thing is recognize that your wife needs attention. I mean, for a long time, like I said, I was interested in career. My wife was there. Okay, hang on there. Let me get here. Let me get there. So recognize the attention, and the other thing is just like learning couples. It's just like that number 3 rule. Listen more than you talk. And I'm horrible at that, to be honest with you. It's a thing I work on still. I'm gabbing, and, she said 3 or 4 things, and I heard them, but I'm moving on. And so, attention, I mean, not that you have to do everything, but, your wife needs your attention. She has needs, period, and if you're not listening, you will never find out what they are. And I'm not proud, to say, I mean, you're asking me a question, I'm trying to answer it, but I'm not answering it like I did all that right, obviously. But those are the two biggest things, to me, is no matter what you do, make sure that you're paying attention to her, and two, just listen to what she's saying. And there are other things that younger couples have all the time, like finance. We've never had problems with that. We've always made sure that we we're good stewards over whatever resources we have. And my wife, I have to make her buy stuff. I buy jewelry for her, and she looks at it and says, how much did you pay for that? And I said,
Yep.
that's all right. But and I don't pretend to know much more than that. The other thing is, like that old show used to be on TV, is yes, dear, yes, dear, yes, dear, and go from there. But it's part of the other thing. Those are 2 main things I was saying. I mean,
I think a lot of men, like, they kind of know, like, anecdotally, they kind of know, women need to be listened to, and you got, but then they don't really do it.
Yeah.
Right? And I think there's some disconnect, like, men view that as like a terrible chore that they don't want to do.
Right.
It's like, you're supposed to, but nobody's doing it right. And then they're wondering why, other aspects of their marriage are not great.
Right.
And it's like, well, because the main thing that you're supposed to be doing, you're not doing, right? It's just amazing to me, like, just how simple sitting down and listening to your wife is, and just asking her questions and listening to her answer. It's like, that's so basic. It's so 101.
I agree.
I think that fixes a lot more things than guys give it credit for. We're looking for some big cosmic solution. Give me some really difficult thing to do and I'll do it. It's like, it's sit and listen to your wife. What else you got for me?
I know. It's all in the execution,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree.
All right, so tell us about you're at Tinker Air Force Base, you're retired, you're working there. How do you first hear about Men's Alliance? And what did you think about it when you first heard about it?
That's a great question. We were at the Men's Ignite conference in Dallas in October of 24. And I love doing pull-ups. I used to be able to do them. Now I can barely do one. So that's that's my personal SMART goal, by the way. But to do 3. But these guys came on stage, and you were probably there. I don't remember the guys. I know they all were, they all had bulk, and they all had. They weren't showing muscles like a couple other guys that were speaking.
Thick.
But
thick.
But when they came on stage, it was impressive. And I said to myself, what in the world? I mean, I didn't know whether they were farm boys or what the deal was, but because they all sort of had on jeans and like I very seldom wear my shirt outside my pants. I told my wife, she says, why don't you have your shirt tucked in? Well, that's an old man thing. If I'm going there, I better wear this outside. But I was
Well,
impressed.
you look sharp.
Yeah, I thought
It
you
was
looked
sharp.
great.
Well, and it was presence. And the other thing is, I love this word, it was an authentic a thing. And I was listening to guys talk, and a lot of people spoke. One of the guys spoke. I used to be in an organization called Oklahoma Business Ethics Consortium. I can't remember the guy's name. It was a black guy. He talked about his father, everything he learned in third grade from his father. But he lost a lot of it. I can't remember his name, but he was there. But what I was impressed with was the presence, and then it said, and this was like 9 o'clock at night. It was you guys didn't come on 9 o'clock at night, but it was like 9 o'clock at night.
It was close.
Okay.
It was close to that.
This was the main session or a breakout session?
No, this is the main session. It was on stage.
Session. Yeah.
And then they said, okay, we're gonna work out. We'll see you at 6 o'clock in the morning. I said, 6 o'clock in the morning? I'm not doing that. And I'm an early riser. Mm-hmm. And I thought they were joking. So one of the guys, Brian's son, Forge's son, Trey, who's also a Men's Alliance, he has a job, not able to come a lot. Trey could do pull-ups like like whatever. And he said, I'm going. So I paid any mind. And so the next morning, Trey came back. He was just hopping up like he was on something. I said, what's going on? He said, man, you're going to love that. They do workouts. We were doing pull-ups. And he said, we got to start one of these. Well, Trey is youthful exuberance. But Dad, Brian, Forge, followed through. And he says, when we get back, let's start one of these. And we were on the chapel trip. The chapel sponsored us going down there. And I was doing one of the breakout sessions, which I hadn't planned to do. But one of the chapel says, Oscar, I want you to do one of the breakout sessions. And Simba and Brian were in the session, as was Turbine, because we didn't have call signs then. But now I can barely remember their real names sometimes. But and they were saying, yeah, we got to check this thing out. And so I'm saying to myself, well, I'll support you guys. I'm in Rotary. So I said, well, come to my Rotary Club. We'll do a collection thing. We'll get you started. And I said, I'll just be the man behind the scenes. I told the guys, I'm vice president of the club. I told the guys, I said, hey, these dudes at Tinker, and Oklahoma City does, Midwest City and specifically does everything to support Tinker. Tinker is, is both economic and otherwise patriotic. And I'm a patriot because of Chappie James, so I'm big on the country. But at any rate, so Forge came to one of our meetings, and of course he had on, T-shirt, and he had muscles, and I was standing beside him. We both had on, T-shirts with Men's Alliance T-shirts, and so people were saying, "Well, you in that dress?" No, and I'm not in it, but I said he's in it. But I said I'm support. I said so. I sort of helped them get money. So Ford says, "Why don't you come to one of our meetings?" And so to help start. So we started in January. It was cold, it was snow out there, and I'm saying to myself, "Okay, you guys look good. Let me know if you need any support." And then, and I'm not sure when this happened, somebody said, why don't you actually join us out here? And I went to your preset deal was, you guys are too young, and I'm not so young, not doing that. But then I just said, well, I try to work out anyway, so I'll go out with them. And then it became, I could not lose it. I met, Simba was in my class, Caden was in my class, or my session, and before we left Texas, he said, sir, I want to take a picture with you. And, everybody else sons are taking pictures with their fathers, and because my son is 40-something, he wasn't there, but so I said, sure. And I thought he was talking about somebody else. He says, I want to take a picture with you. So that's when I first met Caden, and it was I'm finding myself a little speechless. It was a kind of a chemistry that I just had to stay connected to those guys. And so then I just started coming. My wife looked at me several times. She said, certainly you're not serious. I said, well, you know, they got rules, and number one is don't die. So I said, I'm just going to go. But then it's in our generation, you know, you know, is that competitive, and you guys saying, well, you know, you can't do this. You know, if you don't want to do it, if you don't think you can do it, then don't do it. I said, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, now I'm going to do it twice as hard.
Weren't you on one of the tribesmen like information calls when we did a video call? Was he on one of those? I remember somebody from an Air Force base.
Tribesman information.
You know, like those video calls we would do across the country?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was
people
with
who wanted
the
information.
chaplain. That was with the chaplain there at Tinker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, we now have there are now 2 chaplains, and because I'm good at shaming. You know, after a while, I mean, I'm saying, well, you know, you guys talk about resilience, and if somebody mentions the word resilience to me one more time, you know, I say we got all these commanders on base. Nobody. When I was in the Air Force, you can remember this, at least in particular when I was in Air Training Command, we used to call it the American Toy Company, but. You know, the commanders went to the chow hall, they went to the clubs, they checked on the cops on the gate, and they went to chapel. Even if you weren't a Christian, you went to chapel because, you know, it's lead, follow, or get, you know, out of the way, so to speak. And the other guys, you know, the troops would follow you. But now that's, and I'm not saying you don't see a lot of that. I'll just put it like that.
Yeah.
Anymore. But at any rate, so, you know, we have 2 of the 4 chaplains are in our tribe, and they come often now.
That's great.
But
What does your wife think about it now? Does she still think you're crazy, or does she get it?
Well, thinking me crazy is a general thing for her to stay married to me. So that part does. But she, because I tell her, I said, these guys are doing things. You know, my whole thing is I'm basically. Ross Perot used to have a saying, which the Air Force had, that, you know, eagles don't flock. You have to find them one at a time. And I kind of like Ross Perot, and then he was visionary. Plus, he was also the same height I am, so I like that. But so I used to always tell her, I said, you know, I'm not a joiner, first of all. And but I kept seeing things in Men's Alliance. Everything seemed to have a symmetry about it and a realness about it, and it all sort of spliced together. All of it, you know, it's like I don't know how you guys actually sat and planned it, but it comes together. It glorifies God and builds up the human aspect at the same time. It's almost an indescribable type of thing, and she knows once I get on to something, I'm not getting off, so to speak, and so I kept telling her, I said, this is a good thing. I said, I don't know how it works necessarily, but these guys are real. Every guy I met or talked to when I started going through the Carry That Fire apologetics on through, they were sincere. When no matter what you needed, somebody would do something to build you up. I mean, the values, honor, encouragement, trust, all that stuff, feedback. I mean, first of all, that stuff was falling into what I do anyway. But I saw guys carrying it out, and they weren't projecting themselves as being flawless. They were admitting their vulnerability. And like I said, I pretty much don't join things. I like that Ross Perot thing. I like just being by myself. In fact, I'm probably the worst example, or maybe the perfect example, because of the isolation thing. Mm-hmm. But she sees all of that, and she sees some change in me. Thank goodness too. That's positive. So she loves it. In fact, she had a hip surgery, and the doctor, the screw came out, so she had to have it again. So she has to do. She couldn't make this trip. We normally travel together, but now she loves. In fact, she told the women's prayer group, and I got a text which I can show you. She said, "By the way, the ladies prayed for you last night. Don't embarrass us." So basically, but no,
that's great.
I feel like Men's Alliance is a bunch of loners who found each other.
Yeah.
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 So it's a flock of eagles.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because I'm the exact same. So many of us are like,
Yeah.
I'm not a joiner. I mean, if you told me about Men's Alliance today, I'd be like, I'm good.
He was talking about HBCU. I can't tell you how many fraternities say, "Well, you got to get in this fraternity, brother, because you're not in this fraternity."
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And then you get shamed. Well, if you're not this, then you're not supporting the cause. Don't think so. Mm-hmm. And so when I saw it, like I said, when I saw you guys on stage, it was just something, it projected differently. And like I said, when Trey came back, he says, "Man, you got it." In fact, he might have been on because Andy Peck, who's the chief chaplain that you probably talked to at the time, was saying he was telling Trey, Brian's son, Forge's son, was saying, you got to get into this. But so it's I'm the type of guy, I keep looking for the flaws. I keep looking for to fall apart. Mm-hmm. And I realize the fragility of human beings, but I love the fact that it's just people building each other up. Mm-hmm. And in the old King James, the word exhort is used a lot. Mm-hmm. Exhortation. You're building up, you're strengthening, you're empowering. You're not. It's not a destructive force, and its focus is so pure. And something like this is needed now more than ever. I say all the time to young men that I see, well, I got a girlfriend, we already have a baby, and then they're not in the home. The absence of a male in the home, the family structure to me is so, it's people don't want to hear that. And I can tell you I get a lot of kickback or flash, back, or whatever the word is, because people say, well, that's either conservative or, you're this, you're the other. And to me, it's just basic.
Yeah, that amazes that anybody pushes back on that, because that's just such a fundamental truth, right? Is like, it's so statistically proven.
I tell you, and it's across all. It doesn't matter what your ethnic group is.
Right.
I've seen it on all different. When I was in the Air Force, I'd see guys. Because when I was Air Force, it was a lot of family issues and alcohol and things like that. And I remember my first sergeant, we used to go and, just speak with the guys who are absolutely great at their job, but at home they're a different guy. And like I said, I'm not tossing myself out of there, because, just negligence. I mean, it's, you don't, like you were saying, they know, but they don't execute. I mean, if knowing was all it took to get to heaven, I'd already be there, because I know the Bible a lot, but I have not been transformed. And that's one of the good things. Well, I have, but on a day-to-day basis, you
if
realize.
Knowing, I always say this: if knowing is all it took, we'd all have six-pack abs. We all know how.
Isn't that the truth?
We all know how.
Isn't that
right?
the truth? Yep.
Eat right and exercise.
Yeah.
Why don't we do it? Because execution is a lot harder.
Absolutely.
We don't need more knowledge.
Absolutely.
We just need more discipline.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're in Sooner Tribe, which, by the way, just reminds me, like, God used that Ignite conference in Dallas to bring all kinds of goodness about.
Oh, really?
Like, that's just amazing. Like, that's how Sooner Tribe
Yeah.
got there. It's
Yeah.
from
Yeah. Oh,
Ignite,
absolutely.
Dallas, right? That's also how we got to New Mexico, was
Okay.
Ignite Dallas. God brought them in to Dallas that needed to hear
That was a powerful
about us. It was a phenomenal one. I usually don't get to hear a lot of the speakers at an Ignite conference because I'm working at the booth or whatever, but the one speaker at that conference that I was like, as soon as this guy comes on, I'm gonna go sit down and listen, was Daryl Strawberry.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I got to go hear
Yeah.
Daryl Strawberry,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
I grew up with a whole stack of his baseball cards.
Yeah.
I want to
Okay.
go listen to this guy.
Okay.
And that was powerful.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you're in Sooner Tribe, and they get you in, and you're all in. So tell me a little bit about your Carry the Fire experience. What was Carry the Fire for you?
Well, I don't know what I can say and not say here.
Say anything you want.
Okay, so you can edit out the stuff,
Yeah.
because I'm leery. People say, "What happened?" I can't tell you. If I tell you, I gotta kill you. But well, first of all, we were blessed by 3 great leaders, and Phil Webb, Arvell, Andrew Sage Newman,
Yep.
and Eric Link. I think it's Linebaugh. I'm not sure how to say his last name.
Yeah.
And like I said, Phil's interest.
Link and Sage and Webb.
Link and Sage and Webb.
Good job, guys.
And Webb, I remember, when our first session before we met you, and where it was a big build-up. So we thought when we saw you, that'd be, sky burst and everything else.
We got to make a note for them not to create such a big buildup.
But anyway, I remember Webb saying, "Okay, guys."
That only happens when I come out.
He says, "So let's see what you know. How many?" And first he says, "How many guys read the book Answer with Truth?" And now here's where I messed up. I had Answer with Truth, and I read Keuchel's books and some other things, and because I was overdoing it, and they kept saying, "Get to the book. That's the book." Anyway, Webb said, "How many read the books?" I'm up here, not like your guy volunteering. I'm thinking, I'm going to get some extra kudos because, we all read the book. And then it says, well, so, and I can't remember how he expressed it, but I remember it was on page 20. He says, "What do you say? How do you know they're in this?" And this is like the first day. And he said, "Come on, guys, grind, guys, grind." And so I remember sawdust.
He does a good Webb.
I was going to say, that's definitely Webb.
In fact, we called ourselves the 49er Grinders because, and we had a guy, Pitbull. Pitbull will always be calling out the cadence. And but anyway, Webb got us, so he says, "Have you guys read the book or not?" And so after the second time, I didn't want to, because he was actually asking. I said, "Well, I read it, but maybe I didn't study it, so I didn't come back." So I basically said, "I read it, but I didn't finish reading it," or something. I can't remember. Then somebody else volunteered, and I was glad that guy Roadrunner, I think, went out and he was eating Roadrunner up alive, and we were just standing there. It was like looking at somebody, watching carrion being eaten. We said, "Whew," and we felt for Roadrunner, and I think it was Roadrunner. And so anyway, he says, "Okay, so the next time, guys, read the book, and and then the next time I thought I had read, and then we still got, he just said, "You're not grinding, guys. You got to grind." And so we were glad when Sage came on, and Sage was a little bit okay, and we, but anyway, it started this whole thing about grinding. We would say, and he had another saying that talking don't cook the rice. So we started saying, somebody would say something and getting choked out. He said, "Well, you didn't do it. Talking don't cook the rice." And we got to Texas. He was saying, talking don't cook the barbecue. I said, "Well, he just switched it up." But we were literally.
Did he say the rent is due at all?
Huh?
Did he ever say the rent is due?
No, it didn't say.
He didn't say he saved that one?
That's a Webbism right there.
Didn't say that. And then, and this is a personal thing, almost as soon after he came on, Tammy got hit by a truck, and so, and this is you're really just personal to me. The Lord put that on my heart, so every day I committed to praying for him and sending him a text about Tammy, and
Wow.
we have a rapport now because of that. Now I was also still, I wanted him to know that I wasn't expecting any brownie points. I mean, since he was the, class leader or anything like that, and he understood as well. But I was so touched by. And he started sending me, I'd pray for him, but when he prayed, it'd be a video, and I would say,
Yeah.
and I don't do good selfie. If you take a picture of me and tell me to take it, I don't know how to look like a guy constipated. I don't know how to smile. My wife does it naturally. I always look like, what's he doing? I can't get my facial muscles to smile unless you just catch me. But but I eventually, start sending him video, and I just look crazy. I told him, I said, please excuse the look. I don't know how to act and seeing yourself on videos, but his example, he expressed is one of the things I said in Carry the Fire. I was so amazed that he says, well, my job is to be a steward for Tammy, and I would just, I had guys in the tribe, we'd be praying for him during part of our devotionals and things like that. But I was so impressed, and I shouldn't say impressed, these words sound empty. I mean, he was living Job-like stuff.
Yeah.
And he wasn't pretending that it was, it wasn't.
He was real.
It was real.
He was real.
It was real. I mean, we'd be praying sometimes, and he'd be in tears, and he'd be crying out, and I would say, boy, so that's what a fervent prayer looked like, because you can pray, and some people's prayers, they can call down, rain from heaven. And I'd be praying, they would say, can you just put a tinker of water on that one? And not, and everybody, it's the heart. I'm not saying you got to have a certain way of praying. But, he'd be calling out, and I'd be literally in tears sometimes as he's called out. So I learned so much from him and still do. And
that's awesome.
And how to. And that goes back to Carry the Fire too, because, and I can't remember who said this, I don't know whether it's Sage, he was saying, if you don't know, people talk about the suffering servant, but most of us don't know how to suffer. We haven't really suffered. And I was saying to myself, okay, I'm getting a little bit of this, not a lot, but a little bit of this. You have to embrace this concept of suffering, to understand, how, Jesus Christ, suffered. And you say, well, you can see the tears, you can see, body fluid. You not feel the pain, but it's more. You're more in tune with it. If I got anything out of that, and one time, since we can say anything, we were, I guess, the time of hiking. Like I said, my quads and my shins were dead. I don't even know how my legs one went in front of the other, and I was always behind everybody else. I was dragging. But on Sunday morning, we came in a clearing, and I don't know, we were trying to find these crazy things in the dark, with branches hitting you in the face. And all of a sudden, we came into this clearing, and Link said, the lake was in the background, and the sun was coming, and we didn't. It was a cross, and we, I don't know whether Men's Alliance put it up there. I don't know how it, and it was 12 guys. We were all in tears. We were just, and Link said, "This is what suffering is about." And he says, he looked up there, and the sun, morning sun, that Sunday was coming straight across that cross. And I remember Sage telling me, he says, all of you guys have value. He says, you have to realize, can't remember how he said it, I'm almost hearing him thinking about it. And he was telling me, he says, so and I'm sure he had me in mind. He said, so remember this sacrifice and never forget, and I'm paraphrasing him and not doing a good job, but his basic thing was never forget how important you are, basically as a creature of God, and just realize this sacrifice, everything he did, so you guys can basically be here. It was very, very touching. I to this day, and there were several guys that said, when we came across the whatever clearing that was, we went into that little area where there's crossing and the sun come across. It was like, I don't have words. I'm stumbling here, but it was like Jesus speaking in a sense. I mean, without, it's like that song, hymn, "Be Still and Know." Mm-hmm. It was just a stillness there. Link said a couple of things, and we just stood there for, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, because we had to go on. And nobody said a word. We just looked at that cross and the sun coming across it. And again, it was an understanding of what suffering really was. And it made what a little bit we were going through seem like nothing. But it was just very, I keep saying impressive. I have a very limited vocabulary apparently, but it was impactful. Very touching.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned, well, through the course of this, you kind of laid out 22 years in the Air Force, 53 years married. You've raised two kids, and you were telling me earlier that November 22nd of this past year at the Carry the Fire FTX was the hardest day physically and spiritually of your life.
Yeah, it was. And, like I said, on the 22nd, John Kennedy was assassinated, and also C.S. Lewis died. Well, on the 22nd of November, all of this happened on 22nd of November in different years, but on 22nd of November, 14 years ago, my mother died, and that thought gave me strength for the rest of the day, because I was really, really, my quads were gone, my shins were gone. I had nothing. I was saying to myself, this is only Saturday morning, and I'm already dead. All that practice, carrying the 40-pound backpack. I said, I'm ready. I barely got through the night of Friday night. And but I was really hurting, and all of a sudden, that thought about my mother passing on the 22nd, 14 years earlier, it gave me energy and I said, well, whatever happens, I'm not quitting. I said, you guys are gonna have to drag my carcass wherever you go, but I'm not going down. And it was relatively early on. So I remember we'd run down to the lake and run back, and I think I did that twice. And on the third time, I said, I'm walking. I can't run down there again. Mm-hmm. I mean, this felt like rocks. I mean, you could put a hammer on the bottom legs. And but that thought came to me about my mother, and it's like God has said, okay, this is what you need. Now you can go from here. And I remember telling Sage that, and Sage, because we were saying, well, how did, you looked like you weren't going to make it through the day. I said, yeah, I know. And I shared that with him at the time as well.
We, not a lot, but there's some guys in Men's Alliance who they're just content to just go to their weekly tribe. Mm-hmm. They're like, I'm good. I like this, the weekly. I got my workout, my devotion, my fire, my tribe, my people. But the progression of earning the coin and earning the patch, They're just kind of checked out, kind of not doing that. But my goal is for every guy in Men's Alliance to go to Carry the Fire. So I'm like, that's the most important thing we're doing. The weekly tribe is great. It's awesome. It's necessary, but it's like 50% of it.
It's a whole new thing. Believe me, I was that guy. I was going. This feels good, even when the snow and ice. Yeah, roughing it. I'm good. I'm real. Carry the Fire. It's steps up, and I had seen that where in the writing, where you said that's the goal. Now, so yeah, nice goal. I have lots of goals. I don't need that one. I got a coin, and got got a call sign. I'm good. I wasn't. I'm sounding too flippant. It's not that I didn't want to. I said, well, I got stuff. I don't need another challenge. That sounds like. And I saw a couple of pictures. Guys, looked like they had sweated through things, and I saw one guy, he didn't have a shirt on. I said, "Ooh, what was that all about?" It looked like he was in water, and the thing about it, before we were going, everybody was trying to catch a little glimpse of it. I think it's like that. It's like this.
Oh yeah.
No, I don't think you do that. And I was saying they're awful cryptic about this thing. What? No. And some guys, it's a camping thing. I said, well, I haven't been camping. And he says, well, get this, get that, learn how to build a tent, and. It's funny when I think about it because I was like a Keystone Cop out there. I mean, everything. I bought too much stuff. I looked at all these YouTubes about how to set up a tent. I set the tent up wrong. I had the wrong kind of pole. It collapsed on my head. I was so tired. I just fell asleep. It was on my face. I woke up, dew all on my feet. And I told my wife later, I said, in fact, as she can tell you, I came home. I was in my stocking feet. I had gone in the lake with my shoes on. I figured we'll do this and get this over with. I'm not stripping out here. Well, we had to do that more than once, and so I had wet shoes. Of all the things I packed, I didn't pack my shoes, my extra shoes, because I said, well, I'm just going to use one pair.
Right.
I'll gut this out. And Link came to me later and he says, what you gonna do about dry shoes? I said, that's a good question, because my boots were all squishy and mud and all kind of sand, whatever that lake sand was in there. And of course it was and my underclothes too. And people say, you gonna wash? I threw those things right in the trash. I said, if I take these home, my wife is gonna think something happened really bad. But yeah, it's a whole new level, and it's not just the physicality, but the spirituality of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a Christian literally all my life, and I've been going, like you said, on how I felt. It's I was doing through this, and then I became a Christian, and all of a sudden the question comes, why did you become a Christian? And that question seemed so simple, and I said, I don't have a clue. I mean, I'm struggling to figure it out. And this is where a number of years age doesn't help you. And people say, well, you've been a Christian that long and you don't know? And you have to be honest and say, well, no, I don't really know. And the more I explored the why, the more I realized I really don't know. And then you started realizing, like 1 Corinthians 5:20, and like you were saying, you can't be an ambassador. It's like, and I think that verse says, like God is pleading through you to be reconciled to Christ. And then you come to, for he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become righteousness in him. And all of that all of a sudden means something. I mean, it's not words. You feel it. It's a visceral thing. I mean, it's like, okay, it's inside you. You really, 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 you don't just know the knowledge, you've been transformed. All of a sudden now, we really never get it, and you're always growing, processing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
I'm mentoring on. You probably really are going to have to edit some of this out.
What would your message be to men who say, I think I'm too old to do Carry the Fire?
Well, Well, it would be do it anyway. is the thing. Now, again, full disclosure, I wasn't going in thinking that I'd be going all the way through. I was thinking about the apologetics part. I need to know this. I didn't know the capstone event was. I was thinking it might be a little bit of a walk in the park, a camping trip. You got a cabin or something, but yeah, you have to do it anyway. And age, I mean, they say age is only a number. That's not true either. But you got to keep living. You got to keep being the best person you can. When you're dead, you're dead. And I'm not trying to sound gross here, but you have to be a living, growing thing as long as you're living. And you have to be inspired. I'm inspired by people all the time. I'm a big Horatio Alger type of guy. I get motivated by people who are getting it done, and just like they say about retirement is an illusion. I mean, if you have purpose. I think it was Nietzsche says, something about if you have a why, then you can endure anyhow.
That's right.
And Benjamin Disraeli says something about the success in life is constancy, the purpose. All those things mean something to me. You have to have a good goal in mind. You have to know where you're going, and you got to be on the road to get there. And the beautiful thing about Men's Alliance is you got people that'll help you stay on the road to get there. Because guess what? They're on, like you were saying, they're on that same road. Mm-hmm. Now I'm an introvert, so all of this is difficult, even now, challenging for me sometimes. But I believe in encouraging guys and being encouraged. And my father used to always say, blessings go two ways. If all you're doing is receiving a blessing, you got it wrong. You got to be given a blessing as well.
Well, I'll tell you, you're a huge encouragement. I know you were at the Texas FTX. To every guy there. Every guy there, you were encouraging them, whether you realized it or not. I got to share a quick guru story about you. So this was that moment. I don't know if this was before or after your shoes were wet, but you were barefoot walking by the lake. Mm-hmm. And in Texas, they had some thorns and some cactus. They had plants in Texas that we don't have here in Virginia. Yeah. And you were walking right by me. You were right in front of me, and you stepped on not just a thorn, but like a pack of thorns, like a string of thorns. And you were like, oh, and you picked your foot up, and I saw the bottom of your foot, and I was like, oh, and I was in the middle of saying to you, sit down. I was thinking like, we're gonna get a first aid kit over here, and you need to have a seat so we can work on your foot. And you just went, just pulled them all out and kept walking. You just walked on away. I was like, and somebody looked at me, somebody was like, is he good? And I was like, I guess he's good. He just pulled him out and walked off. By that time, I was way in the don't care mode. I'm getting through no matter how. Yeah, that was after that was after the day I had gone there with my boots. I said, well, we're probably going to do this one time. But I also thought, this is even more stupid. I said, well, we'll probably slosh through, and I won't go. The water won't come over my boots, and then I saw, guys going deeper, and I said, oh no, and but by that time it was too late. I couldn't go back and take off my shoes or anything like that. But wow. I appreciate that. Well, I appreciate you coming all this way to join us here for the podcast and our birthday celebration tomorrow. And it's great to have you here, Guru, and it's also great to have a Sooner tribe member here.
I love those guys. And you said something, and you said, it all starts no matter what else we do in the tribe, and that's true. One of my MA SMART goal for my MA SMART goal is become the chief encourager for my tribe. So I do all kinds of. I took. And again, this is Webb. Webb is, he's beating us down in the that little shelter thing there. Get those girls down. I said, here we go. Write that down. And so I've taken on the challenge of just I send notes to guys and cards to guys and and check on them and it's not necessarily something I didn't do before, but it's by draining, all from what I see in you guys to just let guys know that, that they mean something and they matter. And so when guys have issues or something like that, we have one guy, well, I won't go into it, but anyway, one of my SMART goal for the MA is to be the chief encourager for our tribe. I try to take the rules, the 12 rules and the 6 values. I try to keep all that stuff to help me remember it if the skeptic ever shows up or something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like like I said, I was leaving home. I said, make sure I got that coin. Make sure I got this. Okay, got the mission. I'm ready. And I said, he'll probably ask me something else. I don't. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember now. You came in thinking I was going to quiz you on something.
I do not make any assumptions. I make sure.
Okay, well, since you are all prepared and expecting a quiz, I'll ask you one question.
Yeah, probably one I can't answer.
Why are you a Christian?
I'm a Christian because it's true.
There you go. Guru, ladies and gentlemen. Man, thank you again.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. This has been awesome. You've been a blessing to us.
I'm overjoyed to be here. And I will say, when Ellen first says, she says, well, you can either come in person or you can go. I said, well, I'll do it online. Then I thought about it. I said, how many chances am I going to get to go here? And I told Pat, I said, let's just go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know. I said, I'm going to show up. And
I'm sorry to hear about her surgery and that redo. That's always a painful trial.
Yeah.
And wish she could have been here with you. Yeah.
I could listen to you talk all day, man.
Oh, I told my wife, I said, all these years I've been, the greatest burden in your life, and then you have to go get some extra burden to carry.
There you go.
But no, I've loved this. This is more than, and this is building me up as well.
Cool. Great, guys. If you haven't gone to Carry the Fire yet, go sign up today. We're releasing the classes. You go to the website now. You go take your Start the Fire online course. And when you finish that, you can go sign up for Carry the Fire in Pennsylvania, Carry the Fire Virginia, Carry the Fire Texas, and get in one of those classes. It will absolutely change your life.
Absolutely. No question.
Awesome.
All right, men, I want to tell you about the biggest thing Men's Alliance is doing in 2026. The biggest thing we're doing this year is our Leadership Summit. It's the first time we've done something like this, and the need for it could not be greater. We are training leaders in Men's Alliance. If you haven't noticed, we've got over 360 tribe leaders, over 45 region leaders, and now 7 division leaders. We are a leader building machine in Men's Alliance, and we are investing in you. We want to train you to be a better leader, no matter where you are, no matter what level you're at. This Leadership Summit is going to take you a level higher. April 17th and 18th. April 17th and 18th. It's at Salem Baptist Church, Richmond, Virginia. Salem Baptist Church, Richmond, Virginia, April 17th and 18th. 2026 Leadership Summit. Listen to some of our guest speakers. Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, Jason Eagle Dickinson, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Goen, Pastor Stan Grant, and retired Vice Admiral Dean Lee, along with me, Thor, Sheepdog, Gladiator, your MA staff. This is leadership training for MA tribesmen. Every tribesman is invited to this thing because every tribesman is a leader. There will be breakout sessions for chiefs, workout chiefs, devotion chiefs. There's going to be sessions for regional leaders, tribe leaders, division leaders. We are pouring into and investing in you, our leader, at every single level. Whether you are already in one of those roles or you desire to be in the future. Like I said, this is for any Men's Alliance tribesman. Don't miss our Leadership Summit 2026. This is the biggest thing we're doing. Go to our website and click on training. men'salliancetribe.com. Click on training and register for our summit today. We're only charging $25 for this thing, just enough to cover getting speakers here and making the coffee. So come on, we need you there. This is going to sharpen us all as leaders.